Good afternoon. Welcome to Module 1 of our 4-part webinar series entitled 4C's of Managing Change. Our subject matter expert for today's webinar session is currently the Executive Director of the Civil Service Institute of the Civil Service Commission. He retired from the Manila Electric Company after 31 years as Vice President and Head of Human Resource Development and Executive Director of its Meralco Management and Leadership Development Center, which is now known as the First Pacific Leadership Academy. He was a 2012 President of the People Management Association of the Philippines, the premier association of HR professionals here in the country. He was also the 2012 President of ARTO International, an Asia-based organization of training and development professionals with an international presence, and a 2-year president of the Philippine Society of Training and Development. He is also the recipient of the following awards, namely the Global HR Excellence Award from the World HRD Congress, the Gavel Award for Leadership and Communication from Toastmasters International District 75, the Tangi Alumni Award from UP Soler, Gawad Maestro Leadership Extraordinaire from the Philippine Society of Training and Development, and the International HRD Excellence Award from ARTO International. So let's welcome our speaker for today's webinar, Mr. Arthur Luis P. Florentine FPM, otherwise known as Sir Phil.
Thank you, Isa. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the 4C's of Managing Change. This is a 4-module series, and we are now on Module 1, which is Committing to Change. Before we proceed with the webinar itself, I'd like to discuss some of the e-learning features of this system. First, you will notice on your device that there's a hand. There's an icon hand. If you touch that hand, you can raise it so that you can ask questions. So let's try it out. Can you touch those hands so that you can raise your hands? Okay, I see 35 raising their hands. We can also do some surveys. For example, how many of you are from the private sector? How many are from the public sector? And how many are from the non-government organizations? Okay, we have here the survey, and we are waiting for your response. Okay, we have 54% from the private sector, 28% from the public sector, and 8% from the non-government organizations. Let's see, how many of you are attending alone? That means that you are with your device without anybody beside you. Or you're using one device, but there are 1 to 5 participants using that together. Or you are in a group of 6 to 10 participants. Or in a group of 11 to 15 participants. Or more than 16 participants. As you can see, it's possible to take advantage of this webinar, not only alone, but you can do it with other participants so that you can learn together with this webinar. Okay, so group of 1 to 5 participants is 87%. Group of 6 to 10 participants is 6%. And group of 11 to 15 participants, 2%. And group of more than 16 participants is 5%. So as you can see, you can learn from this webinar together with other participants from your organization. Now, aside from questions and surveys, we also created an FB discussion thread so that if later on, after this webinar, you have any questions about managing change, then you can post your question in that FB thread. And the FB thread is csi.elearning2018@gmail.com. I am actually being video recorded now, and we will be posting the recorded video also in that FB discussion. I also am aware that the video recording will also be posted in the TMAP website. So, if, for example, during this session, something happened and you were not able to complete it, then look at the you can look at the posting of the video recorded uh, session. Okay, so given that, we are into 4C's of managing change, and this is actually a 4-module e-learning course to enable you to effectively manage change using the 4C's framework. After the 4 courses or 4 modules, you shall be able to prepare and implement a change management plan so that you can effectively manage change. Given this, our objectives is that by the end of the course, you shall be able to appreciate the value of managing change and prepare an initial draft of a change management plan. That will be for the first module. You shall also be able to identify, select, and schedule appropriate interventions that will build capability to implement change. This will be for the second module. And you shall be able to implement the change management plan by properly communicating and collaborating with stakeholders. And we will discuss this on the third module. And lastly, you shall be able to monitor the implementation of the change management plan and sustain the progress towards achieving your change objectives. This will be on the fourth module. As you can see, we will have 4 modules, and the course outline is patterned after the 4 C's of managing change, which has 4 stages. And the first stage is committing to change. The second stage is capacitating for change. Third is contributing and collaborating for change. And the fourth is celebrating and continuing change. So for today, June 19, we will have module 1. Next week, June 26, we will have module 2. July 3, we will have module 3. And lastly, July 10, we will have module 4 so that we'll be able to cover all of the stages of the 4 C's of managing change. Now, before we proceed, I would like to ask you, how many are currently experiencing the need to implement changes related to one, products and services, or processes and practices, meaning that you'd like to enhance or improve what you're doing so that you can do it better or faster, or you would like to institutionalize changes with respect to your staff by developing their competencies or taking a look at their complement. You might want to increase or decrease your complement so that you can appropriately compete in the business world. Or you might want to make changes in your organizational structure, especially among those in the public sector. Rationalization is one of the things that agencies are currently doing. Or you might want to introduce technology so that you can do things better. Again, I'd like you to select one out of these uh, selections. By the way, we have right now 88 attendees. And as of 3:05, we now have 94 attendees. The attendees are the ones we are counting devices, not number of people, because there are some devices that there are more than one people, persons, or individuals using the device. Okay, so for products and services, 3% of you will be introducing change with respect to products and services. 45% will be introducing change with respect to processes and practices. 81% with respect to staffing competencies and complement. 19% with respect to organization structure, and 12% introducing technology. Um, we are currently in a world where change is happening all around us, and we need to change as an organization to be able to adapt to the changing environment. And so we now start with module one, which is committing to change. And our objective for this module is that you shall be able to appreciate the value of managing change. Why is it that we need to deliberately manage change? Describe a framework that can be used to manage change so that we can do it deliberately and systematically. Describe the nature of change so that we will know how to deal with it, and identify and assess the stakeholders who shall be involved in implementing the change. And given those learning objectives, our outline is we will discuss the value of managing change, the 4C's of managing change, the nature of change, and managing the stakeholders. With respect to the value of managing change, I would like to quote Albert Einstein. He said, insanity is doing the same things over and over again, but expecting different results. We cannot expect better outputs, better products and services unless we do something differently. If we continue doing the same things over and over again, then we will not be able to achieve what we want to. Einstein also mentioned that we can solve problems by using the same kind of thinking that created the problem. We may have certain problems because we have a certain perspective, we have a certain mindset that created it. If we continue to use the same mindset, then we'll not be able to solve the problem. What we need is to shift mindset so that we will be able to address the situation. By the way, as of 3:11, we now have 100 attendees. Now, I would like to ask for those of you going through a major change, how many are experiencing smooth implementation with evident results, meaning that it was easy for you to introduce the change, and by this time, you are now seeing the results of the change that you have introduced. Or people are compliant with the change, but project is delayed without evident results. So people are not complaining. In fact, people are performing the change as we expected. But the project itself is delayed and we do not see results coming from the project. Or people are not resisting. They're not talking about talking negatively about the change or about the project, but nothing is happening. And sometimes we call this foot dragging. You know, they may be going through the motion, but nothing really is happening. Or lastly, people are vocally resisting the project, meaning that you can hear people resisting and actually complaining about the project. So we would like to again request you to answer this question. Okay, so those who were able to smoothly implement their change projects with evident results represent 16% of the participants. Those people are compliant with the change, but the project is delayed, 24%. People are not resisting, but nothing is happening, 39%. And people are vocally resisting the project, 21%. So we can see that a large number, actually, of our participants are experiencing difficulties and problems with respect to managing change. So, given that, I would like to cite that all smokers know that smoking is dangerous to their health. In fact, there are very graphic warnings about the danger of smoking to their health, but yet they still smoke. So even sometimes if we know, if cognitively, we know that there is a need to change because it will be better for us, we do not immediately go into change. In fact, 70% of change projects fail. And this is in accordance with several authors on managing change. 70% of projects fail. Why? Well, according to uh, OCD and Charan, businesses don't fail because of lack of good ideas. They fail for lack of ability to implement them. We may have solutions, we may have something good to introduce in terms of change, but it is our ability to implement them that deters us from uh, effectively introducing the change. And I would like to say that no matter how logical and rational plans and strategies are, they will not automatically become effective. In the real world, decisions are made rationally and emotionally. So sometimes we think well about our projects, we think well about our um, um, change, but what we fail to consider are the people who will be implementing the change. Also, the people will be affected by change because their actions are motivated not only through rational factors but also emotionally. So, given that, we will now go into the 4C's of managing change, where we will start with committing to change, capacitating for change, contributing and collaborating for change, and celebrating and continuing change. Why are we starting with committing to change? Because we need to involve people in order to create ownership and commitment. Unless we involve people, they will feel that they are not part of the change project and they will not automatically contribute towards implementing the project. On the other hand, by involving them from the very start, from assessing the need to change, towards also identifying what needs to be changed, and it will create ownership and it will create commitment towards implementing the change project. A mere commitment is not enough. We need to build capabilities to implement change. Because if we are introducing change, that means we expect people to do something differently. More often than not, if they will be doing something differently, they may not be familiar or competent about what they will need to do. And therefore, we need to deliberately build capabilities. Then, as we roll out, as we start the change, we need to lead people to work together for change because change will not be implemented in isolation of others. We need to be able to collaborate so that everybody will be able to contribute to the change. And as we are experiencing success in the way we are implementing change, we need to sustain the change by embedding practices into the culture. We also need to celebrate the change, the success, so that it will excite people more towards embedding the change into their culture. So given these 4 stages of managing change, there is a need for us to do this deliberately by preparing a change management plan. For this module, committing to change, we will develop a communication plan so that we will be able to deliberately uh, influence others to support the change. And then in terms of capacitating for change, we can develop an intervention plan. How do we build the capabilities that will help implement the change? With respect to contributing and collaborating for change, we can look into a risk management plan so that we'll be prepared as we roll out the change. And lastly, we need to have a monitoring and evaluation plan so that we can continually check that we are doing what has been planned and we are achieving what we wanted to achieve. So given this, we need to develop a change management plan. And this is just a template. You can use other templates. But we would like to suggest two parts. One is we should look into the nature of change. How will it affect people? And how will people support the change? And part two is what are the action plans? What should we do so that we will be able to properly implement the change? Now, under the nature of change, we can have a background, we can look into the change objectives, environmental assessment, and then we should also look into the stakeholders, who will be affected by change and who will be implementing the change. With respect to the action plans, we can look into the change interventions, what is it that we need to do, what are the resource requirements so that we'll be able to do this properly, how do we monitor and evaluate, and how do we sustain the change? Now, at this point, I'd like to ask you, for those of you going through a major change, how many prepared a change management plan that are well documented and comprehensive? It was very well prepared, or it's documented but simple, or it is not documented but you have a plan on your mind, or no plan at all, but you went into implementing the change. It's 3:21, and at this point we have 117 participants. So we are now waiting for your responses. Okay, well documented and comprehensive plan, we have 25%. Documented but simple is 49%. Not documented is 15%, and none is 11%. So I think we need to take a look at how can we properly develop a change, how can we properly develop a change management plan. So for this module, we will just take a look at part one, and then we will take a look at part two in the next module. Now, with respect to background, what triggered the change? What will change achieve? Because when we try to think about what triggered the change and what will change achieve, then we can create a compelling reason for change. Actually, I prepared a change management plan template and a sample change management plan. In fact, this is the first time that we're doing webinar, and we prepared for this kind of change because for so many years we have been doing face-to-face classroom training. But now we would like to move into virtual. We would like to move into webinars. And how we plan for the change in terms of implementing the webinar, we prepared a change management plan. Um, we were supposed to send it out to you so that you can take a look at it while I'm discussing this. But unfortunately, we were not able to send it to you. But if you will take a look at our FB later on, we will load the change management plan template and change management sample so that you can take a look at it. So for example, in terms of harnessing webinar as a competency development approach in the public sector, we realize that while we are increasing the number of participant days with respect to our classroom training, we are already reaching a plateau. No? We are not able to increase so much anymore without necessarily increasing perhaps our complement or even our facilities. So the best way to be able to reach out more to the bureaucracy and more participants, um, to reach out to more participants, we can uh, use webinar. I think there's a question. Is that a question? We can send the template after the. Okay, we will send the template after the webinar through your emails and through the FB that we have given you earlier. Okay, so after taking a look at the background, what triggered it, and what are the change that we wanted to experience. By the way, if we are very particular about the change, let's go back to what will change achieve. What we place here is we would like to change from delivering purely classroom-based courses to delivering both classroom-based and virtual courses. We also wanted to shift from a restrained reach due to physical limitation of classrooms, capacity, and geography to increased reach in the bureaucracy nationwide through webinar. We would like to shift from high cost of delivery for CSI courses due to materials, venue, utilities, and with respect to clients, due to travel and accommodation. So we would like to reduce the cost of delivering training programs. From no learning management system, right now we don't have a learning management system, we would like to install and use learning management system to deliver courses and track access to the different courses. Also, we would like to ensure that we have an integrated database of participants which can be easily maintained and accessed. So you see, if we are able to document what we want to change, then as we go through the change, we will see whether we are accomplishing it or not. Then we now move to change objectives. And with respect to change objectives, what does change need to achieve? What needs to change from current to desired state? Actually, that was what I mentioned earlier. And this is so that we will clarify what can be achieved through change, and we know whether we are already achieving it or not. With respect to environmental assessment, we can understand the change that we are introducing better, by trying to find out what factors will affect change implementation, know what may affect it, and we can take a look at different um, approaches, like for example the force field analysis, SL, which I will be discussing later on, and McKinsey 7S. With respect to the force field analysis, this is just being aware that there are certain factors that will help facilitate the change, will help push it forward. On the other hand, there are hindering factors that may push it backward. No? And the factors we can think of are those that are within our environment. What we can do is to make use of the force field analysis with respect to other approaches, like for example, the PESEL analysis. The PESEL analysis consists of political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental factors. How will these factors affect the change that we would like to implement? Like for example, in terms of political, then we should look into how acceptable is the change that we will be introducing. For example, this webinar, we realize that the concept is already approved by the commission. No, we already proposed and approved it, and they see that there is a good reason to implement the webinar. But there are no existing policies or regulations yet to govern the use of webinars or e-learning for government employees. So knowing that there is a need to develop rules and regulations, then that should be part of preparing for this webinar session. Also, it may affect client need in terms of training hours because unlike in the classroom, it is easy to count the number of training hours. In terms of webinars, we will not be able to count the training hours. We don't even know if you are there 100% of the time, or we don't even know that how many of you are using the same device, and therefore your names may not come out in the registration. There can be some um, solutions that we can look into. Like for example, instead of counting the number of hours directly, we can after this course, you are expected to be able to prepare a change management plan. And if you're able to do that, and you're able to submit a change management plan to CSI, then it will be an evidence that you were able to go through this workshop and you were able to acquire the competency that was meant to be developed through this workshop. So we will look at the different factors like political, economic means the monetary factors with respect to the change. Like for example, in this webinar, we expect that it will reduce the cost of delivery for both CSI and the clients, but it will require high upfront investments in terms of systems, like the need to acquire hardware and software, and also in terms of developing the courses, because we will no longer be able to use existing designs. We need to redesign the courses so that it will fit the format of the webinar. Also, in terms of course fees, this may be significantly reduced or even be provided for free. In fact, this particular session, the whole course, will be provided to you for free. So you can take a look at all of these factors. I will not discuss everything. As I mentioned, I will provide you with a sample change management plan where you can take a look at the different factors. If you're not comfortable with the PESEL analysis, you can also take a look at the McKinsey 7S, where it has 7 factors: strategy, structure, and systems, which are considered as the hard factors, and then the skills, the staff, and the style, well, leadership style, which are the soft factors. And then what integrates everything will be the shared values. I don't have the time really to discuss all of this in detail, but what I would like to do is to make you aware that there are these approaches that you can use so that you will be able to deliberately look at the different factors. If you later on, if you will look at the change management plan sample, you will see that as you go through the different factors, you understand the change better, you know what needs to be done, and what can happen because of these factors. And it will help us prepare a better plan for implementing the change. And lastly, we need to take a look at the stakeholders because in the end, the change will not be implemented unless people support and contribute to the change. So with respect to the stakeholders, is that a question? There's a question, who should be preparing this plan? Uh, the leader and the HR can prepare the plan together, but later on I will be also emphasizing that the plan should be prepared involving the rest of the organization through various means, especially through communication, because unless we involve others, we will not create a sense of ownership that will lead towards commitment towards implementing the change. Another question is, how can an ordinary employee earn the support of management to implement the change? So how can an ordinary employee earn the support of management to implement the change? What the ordinary employee can do is to be involved, no, in assessing the organization. Or they can give suggestions. And what we're really trying to emphasize here is that HR especially should be able to make use, no, of inputs coming from all types of employees from the highest to the lowest level. By the way, at this point, we already have 126 attendees. So who will be affected by change and how? And we can take a look at the different stakeholders. One stakeholder is the client. And for me, this is the most important stakeholder because in the end, we are introducing change so that we can be more responsive to our clients. We can better serve and satisfy our clients. Aside from our clients, another stakeholder will be our management. And later on, if we take a look at the different stakeholders, we will see that they have different um, uh, stakes with respect to the change that is being introduced. Aside from management, we can take a look at peers or colleagues because they are the ones that will be supporting us with respect to implementing the change. We can also take a look at the staff, people under us, no, and how we can influence them and motivate them to implement the change. And then the suppliers, because even suppliers will be affecting the change that we would like to implement. And lastly, the public in general. So these are some of the stakeholders. While I mentioned this, does not mean that the stakeholders are limited to these to those that I have listed. Depending on the change project that you would like to implement, there can be other stakeholders. So given that, what we need to do is to identify for each of the stakeholder what will be their gain. On the other hand, what can be their losses? Like for example, in this webinar, with respect to the client, what will be the gain? It can be ready access or better access to learning and lower cost of learning. That can be a gain. But the loss is perhaps not being familiar with technology so that uh, instead of being able to access learning and development, it becomes even more accessible. So we should take a look into that. With respect to management, again, can be better cost, better management of that cost, better delivery of our mandate, especially with respect to CSC. We will be able to develop more government employees with respect to webinar. Uh, but but losses can be, um, again, not being familiar and not being able to assess properly uh, what to implement in terms of webinar. I think we have another question. What is the ideal time frame for the change management plan to fully be implemented for an agency? What is the ideal time frame? Um, it can be around 3 months, but it can be more because what we would like to do is to create involvement among all employees, and later on I will be discussing some approaches to involving these employees. And by involving them, that means we need to communicate with all of them. Sometimes we implement changes without even uh, preparing them and communicating to them, so that what immediately happens is there is a resistance to the change. Uh, so given that, how can stakeholders affect change? We should also look. So while stakeholders are affected by change, they can gain or lose from 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 uh, from the change. They can also affect change. Like for example, a client may not want to uh, patronize the change that we are introducing. Or management may not want to approve it, or because they believe that it is better and it can help us deliver better our mandate, then they can readily approve it and provide the necessary support. So we should also look in for each of the stakeholders. We need to find out uh, how can they affect change. So if we know how stakeholders gain, lose, and affect change, and we also need to find out how can we influence them. How can we influence them so that we can ensure that the stakeholders will positively influence the change. And we can do this by identifying key messages per stakeholder and also action plans, interventions that we need to implement so that they become more committed to the change and they become more capable of implementing the change. Now, how do we promote commitment? By the way, there's another question. Any suggestion to encourage management to adapt change? Okay, this is we're now going into promoting commitment for the change. And what we want to do is to create ownership for involvement, by involving everybody. And what we can do is to communicate using some audit tools. I assume that many of you or almost all of you participants are HR practitioners, and you will be familiar with some of the audit tools. Or if not, then I'd like to make you aware that there are certain tools that we can use so that we can better communicate with others. Like for example, appreciative inquiry, participative action research, World Cafe, and open space technology. I'll not be able to discuss all of this in detail, but at least I would like to make you aware that there are certain approaches that can positively influence the stakeholders. So, given this, for example, in terms of appreciative inquiry, it is an approach where we have 4 stages where you discover the strength of the organization. But you discover this by involving everybody from the highest, from the top, from the management, down to the lowest employee. There are certain interventions that we can do so that you can discover what is positive, the strengths of the organization. And if you are aware of the strengths of the organization, then you can dream what would you like to accomplish, especially through the change that you would like to implement. And knowing what you would like to accomplish, then you can actually then The next is design, not green. I'm sorry. Uh, Next is design. We can design that what needs to be done so that we can achieve our destiny. And this is the four stages of appreciative employment. The next approach is participative action research, where you make, as you notice that in all of these communication approaches, we're making use of large groups so that they'll be able to look at the problem together. Uh, they can plan together. So because if we look at problems together and plan together, then whatever we want to implement will be acceptable because they have been involved from analyzing the problem to planning what needs to be done so that we can address the problem. And then as we go through the cycle, we reflect and learn more from the process. The third approach is World Cafe, and we can, the World Cafe is based on the concept that small groups can talk together better, and the more informal it is, the better that the discussions are, and the more that there are agreements. In fact, they say that decisions are made more effectively in cafes or in other informal areas than in formal meetings. So what is done through World Cafe is that we create or simulate an environment where small groups can talk together. There can be several small groups, and this will take several rounds. And for each round, people will be um, changing tables so that they talk to different participants, and later on, they um, they cross-pollinate ideas until there is a common understanding across the whole group. The last is open space technology, and this is an approach um, that is effective for as small as five in a group to as big as 2,000 in a group. This is a marketplace of ideas where we encourage people to simultaneously discuss different ideas. No? It has a process where people can propose their own ideas. People can buy those ideas by joining the discussions, and then later on trying to integrate all of these ideas into something that will be implementable. So these are the different tools that we can use. You will notice that this is very, very different from what is traditional, like for example, sending out memos that is just one way or just talking to people and convincing them. But this is actually picking up also ideas from different groups so that better we can better uh, understand the change that we want to implement. At this point, we have 131 participants. So, given that, we go back to the uh, 4C's of managing change, and uh, what we would like to do after going through all of the four modules, we will be able to develop a change management plan. At this point, we were able to talk about preparing a communication plan, understanding the change, the nature of change, so that we will know how to share this with others. Also understanding our stakeholders so that we will know how to communicate with them better. Then next week we will be talking about what will be the interventions that we will be preparing so that we can capacitate for change. On the third week, we will talk about risk management. And lastly, we will look into the monitoring and evaluation plan so that we'll be able to sustain the change. We have another question. Is open space the same as breakout groups? It's different because in an open space technology, we encourage people to attend whatever discussion group they that they are passionate about, And when they feel that they are no longer contributing in a small group or they are no longer learning from that small group, they can at any time they can uh, uh, change to another small group so that people are um, transferring from one small group to another until there is like an exchange of ideas across the whole group. So it's quite different, but I think if you're interested, you can take a look at this concept, and it's very very effective. So at this point, it's 3:49, and we're finished with the module unless you have some questions at this point. Are there any questions? Open space session within an open space session within an organization. How frequent are there things that needs to be preserved in an organization? How frequent should we conduct this? Actually, initially, before you even finalize your change management plan, you should already conduct a series of interventions like open space or World Cafe or whatever, so that as you share what change needs to be done, you can also determine what are the views of the different levels of the organization with respect to that change, and what are their suggestions, you know, with respect to implementing the change. This can be done in a period of 2 to 3 months, depending on the, of course, depending on the size of the organization. Do people resist change or resist being changed? I think people resist change because they were not involved. And because if we involve them and they were part of the discussions, then they can own they can own the change rather than resisting it. So another question for those who missed, this is not a question but an announcement. For those who missed this webinar session, they can watch this again through our website www.pmap.org.ph or through the FB that we earlier showed you. So any other? So I guess that's it, and thank you very much.